Hey everybody, welcome back to Verse by Kurt. My name is Kurt Knudsen, and today we are in the book of Genesis. We're in chapter 6. So, as usual, we are going to go through our observation, our interpretation, and our application phases. We're going to pause between each one of those, and then the observation phase has two. We're going to go through all of what we see in the text and just put it on the page. And then I'm going to go through the structure here. If you go through your structure, that's totally fine. And then we're going to distill all that down to the interpretation, and then we're going to see what we can use out of this. The reason I say that is I just want us to pause between before each section. So after my introduction here, pause, and then you're going to write your observations down and so on. If you've seen previous videos, you know what I'm talking about, and I will continue. Just pause it here, and I will see you in the observation phase. Okay, let's go through this. So we have some pretty interesting characters this time around. We have mankind, daughters are mentioned. We have two interesting categories here, sons of God and daughters of mankind. There's actually a really interesting discussion going on right now. The debate is within the discipline of angelology, so the study of angels and other beings like demons and Satan. One of the things that will come up a lot is this, it's called divine council worldview. So it's the divine council language that's in the Psalms and all over the prophets. It's the angelic people that are with God. An author by the name of Michael Heiser has a book that popularizes this view. If you've seen the Noah movie, you've seen this too, so it's kind of fair that, you know, we bring this up here. Are these angels or just godly people? And then the daughters of mankind, are these humans or fallen people? Traditionally, in more evangelical circles, angels are purely spiritual, and it extends back to the Middle Ages. That's why we talk about the angels dancing on the head of a pin, because they're non-corporeal, so they're not physical. Sons of God are just godly people. The people who aren't of daughters of mankind are the ones that are of Canaan. If it's angels and humans, we have a really interesting problem of angelology, meaning can spiritual beings mix with physical beings, and or are spiritual beings actually spiritual physical beings, or what is it? But if somehow they can mix, there's something weird happening there. How are angels mixing with spiritual beings mixing with physical beings? And the presumption is they make the Nephilim. There are references to beings in extra biblical literature called the Watchers. And there's also the Rephaim, which are dead kings. If you look that up in a lot of older Jewish literature, extra biblical literature, is the idea that this was kind of another fall. That's why God flooded, because you're talking about flooding the entire world and killing all the creatures in it. And so the concern is, well, if we're doing that, then whatever happened must be really bad. It can't just be normal sins. I don't know. I hold both camps loosely. I try and understand both views as much as possible. But just for those out there who are Heiser fans, I've read the material too. I understand the ideas and stuff like that. So I am not going to take a stance on it in this. We'll talk about that throughout. But the one thing I do want to do, if I can, is at the end of this starts the whole flood passage through 7 through 9, starting here with 6. And what we're going to do is at the very end, I'm going to contrast this with the Epic of Gilgamesh, because there are a lot of similarities. And we'll talk about why there are similarities. But right now, I just want to hit this part of the Bible and just talk about the data that we have. The Lord has mentioned my spirit, as I said, the Nephilim, which are this mysterious group. And then there's mighty men or men of renown, which again, there's a lot of language that presumes there's this mixture of people, great men. There's Noah, and then his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. What? Mankind began to multiply, saw this. Sons of God saw daughters of man. They bore children. We talked about that. God decides to punish mankind and creatures, which is kind of fascinating. I mean, it's the entire earth. It's fascinating that it is creatures. You know, one wonders why the creatures are getting judged along with mankind. So, I mean, they're all getting punished. There must be something happening just in this time that involves all parties. That's not good. Noah found favor, righteousness, or he was righteous, he was blameless, he walked with God. When? Now it came about when mankind multiplied. So as a time not remain with man forever. Then days shall be 120 years. In those days and afterward is mentioned, so another time marker. Where? On the face of earth or land, gets mentioned a ton. Not remain with man. Of the sky, walked with God. And then I just put the earth filled with violence. That's a descriptor of kind of what's going on in the earth. Words. Toledot now is mentioned for the generations of Noah, later on in the passage here. There's instructions to build the ark, which we'll talk about, and then God establishes a covenant with Noah. So covenants we need to make sure we notice. Instructions of creatures or on creatures in the ark. So the clean versus unclean is mentioned there. Okay, so that's our observation phase. And we'll do structure right here. Okay, here we go. So I labeled this passage the cause for the flood, or cause for flood. If you're preaching through this book of Genesis and you're going through and making different sermon sections, you can use this as one. Like I said, I do it by chapter. So the flood is going to happen right now. I call it the cause for the flood. And it's debatable whether or not this particular instance is the exact cause of the flood or the last straw or what have you. But it's in this section for a reason. We have to understand why this section is here. So the sons of God mixed with the daughters of man. For some reason, that's problematic. Or seemingly. That's verses 1 through 4. That's the exposition. So we're starting the section reading that. The inciting incident, God sees wickedness and decides to wipe out mankind. That's just verses 5 through 7. The rising action, so the thing that gets us, if this is the door into the story, this is before the story, door into the story, this gets us to the climax. It's God finds favor in Noah. So there is a good person out there. Then the climax, God explains how to build the ark. So we get instructions. And I'll just say this too, now that we're here. There are other ark stories. I talked about the Epic of Gilgamesh or the flood story. There's other arcs out there too with the flood stories. There's one that kind of gained popularity recently with Irving Finkel and his discovery of a tablet at I believe it's the British Museum. And he has a book on kind of more of a, I think it's a coracle, like a circular arc. So you can check that out. And there's other ones, you can look into that. But there's parallel passages, flood and ark, that exist. God's covenant with Noah. And it might serve you well to learn about covenants, ancient covenants and how they work. But right now we just need to know, if you're just going through, that there is a deal made with Noah. And there will be a continual Noahic covenant. The resolution, so the end of this passage is filling the animals with in the ark. And that is where this chapter ends. And then we're going to see more of the flood, the loading up in the flood and different things like that. So one thing I do want to do too is I kind of want to take some time and I want to see what the dimensions of the ark are. Just because we have dimensions, I want to kind of put them in here. And just like everything else, I want to do kind of an official, what we know. What I did is I was thinking back to my CAD days back in high school when you had to take computer automated drafting. So if you don't do that now, that's how they used to draft 3D models two-dimensionally. So what I have here is the side view, I have the top view, and I have the front of the ark. So it's hard to tell some of the dimensions here, but everything's in cubits. A cubit is anywhere from probably, just think of the tip of your fingers to, just roughly just think of the tip of your finger to your elbow. If you think of maybe a foot or a foot and a half, you're in the ballpark, anywhere around there. So what you have is you have 30 cubits high, you have 50 cubits wide. So if this is the top, this is the front, right? This is 50. And then you have, it's 300 cubits long. So these were all in, let's see, these are all in fractions of an inch, I think eighths, I believe is the scale here I'm using. I have make yourself an ark of gopher wood. We don't know what gopher wood is. You should make the ark with compartments. I don't have those in here. This is an outside dimension. Covered inside out with pitch, which is, if it's bitumen, there's bitumen in the Iraq area. I'm sure it could have been everywhere. Presumably pitch was. You shall make its length 300 cubits. Make it 50 cubits wide. Its height 30 cubits. And then you should make a window on top of the ark and finish it a cubit from the top. That could either be up or down. I'm guessing it's up, but like a little roof maybe with stilts or something. I don't know. You should make it with a lower, second, and third deck. So that's what these dotted lines are. They're representing the inside of the ark, the decks. So if you were to, I mean, it would be perfect if it's 30 cubits, 10 cubits high. So about 10 feet or, 10 feet and a half, if that makes sense. So that's your ark dimensions. There's information all online about feasibility of an ark like that. I know there's a replica at the Creation Museum, so you can look into that. So that's all our data, just raw data on the page. Let's take all that and let's go into the interpretation phase. Okay, so here's what I have. I have the text is saying, God finds sin so detestable as to destroy beloved creation. And remember, that's a big deal. So remember, he said everything was good. After he created all of humanity, like man and woman, he said it was very good. And so then you have the fall, and then you have kind of a downward slope so bad, he wants to flood the earth. It makes you think of the Enoch story of last chapter and him taking him up because he was good. Maybe he was rescuing him from everything being that bad. I mean, I don't know. It seems like things got really bad enough to cause the flood. I know people find this to be a moral problem with a good God, is to destroy creation, but that's the point, is God is so holy, and how bad was creation? That's kind of how you have to think of it. So that's what I have. It goes to God's holiness, his purity, his can't be near sin. And it also goes to Noah's character somehow, that Noah is that faithful and righteous. Okay, we're going to move on to the application phase. Pause here, and we will continue with that. I have heart, soul, mind, strength. Those are my categories. You can have whatever you want. I can love fallen mankind. And I have fallen mankind not just to say we should just love people because they're fallen. It's just people are fallen. And I know God is pure here, but notice God does rescue humanity through Noah. No, he doesn't start over and make new humanity. We are all fallen because we're all descendants now of Noah. We narrowed the kind of pool of where we're from. So, soul, I can worship a holy and righteous God. That is both this. He is wrathful, and that is his righteousness against unjust things, which he obviously found in mankind. Mind, I can know God hates sin, and very much so. Strength, I can serve a holy God. So this is the same God that we serve now, is a God that just absolutely hates evil. So keep that in mind as we live our lives. This is something that really cost humanity. Obviously, we'll see it costs God too later on. But yeah, so everything is, sin is a huge deal. It's not just something to be taken lightly. So if you get anything from chapter 6, Genesis chapter 6, that's it. All right, that's Genesis chapter 6. I will see you guys in chapter 7. Thank you. Bye.